You Faith, I have something important to tell you. I hate the Eviscerator. Reginald here. I'm releasing this video in concordance with my Eviscerator tutorial, so you're welcome to go watch that before you watch this. Or you can watch this and go watch that. It's up to you. I consider them separate subjects, so I put them in separate videos. You see, I don't like the Eviscerator very much. Not because it's a terrible weapon, it's kind of fine, but because it's not an Eviscerator. It's not at all an Eviscerator, in fact. It's not big enough, it doesn't hit hard enough, and it doesn't have a power field. It's simply not an Eviscerator. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what I mean, and what those rejects over at Fat Shark HQ should do if they could ever get off their fat, sharky asses. If I'm beating this dead horse a little too hard right now, you'll have to forgive me. I'm feeling a bit sassy this morning. But let's redirect that sass to somewhere a little bit more in line with the title. The Eviscerator isn't one, and here's why. You see, Eviscerators are supposed to be tall, very tall, and wide, girthy, you know? They're supposed to be these kind of absurdly large swords out of some garbage anime that you watch too many seasons of and you probably shouldn't have. But the Eviscerator is actually pretty small in Darktide. In fact, it's more of a bastard sword. I know when I first got my hands on it and swung it for the first time, I thought, boy, this thing seems a little small. And whoa, this thing swings really fast. And I know I'll probably say in my review that, oh, the weapon swings slowly, but it swings slowly relative to other weapons. It doesn't swing slowly relative to what an Eviscerator should feel like. The Eviscerator should feel like throwing a truck around, and this thing feels like swinging a heavy sword. And for that matter, it doesn't hit very hard when it hits things. I'm tired of hitting poxwalkers and having them live. This is supposed to be an Eviscerator. Why are they surviving? Why is anything surviving? Yes, I know, it only 2x's your strength in tabletop, but 2xing your strength in tabletop generally puts a human at strength 6, and it has a power field so it's hitting at AP 2. This thing can saw Terminators in half. Sure, you're probably going to die in the attempt, but that's not the point. The point is that this thing can saw Terminators in half. I'm hitting Ogre and Crushers with it 4 times. Okay, they have a lot of wounds, but didn't they add wound damage to this thing? I thought they did. Let's go take a look. These new indexes are pretty sweet. And yeah, it does 2 damage per hit. And actually, it takes me more than 4 hits typically to kill a Crusher unless I ult. And frankly, the Ogren aren't that tough. Here's Bulgrin, and they're toughness 6, so you're getting them on 4s, and they take 3 wounds, so that's 2 hits, and it has 2 attacks on a Repentia. So there you go. You more or less know how many hits it should take in the game. It should take about 2. And yes, that's Carapace on the Bulgrin, because our bulwarks are a lot weaker. And so we're looking at about the same thing, but no, our Eviscerator takes like a bajillion hits, and it has no headshot advantage. You can't hit anything on the head unless you basically jank it. It's horrible. Alright, so what should we do about this thing? I mean, it's nothing like an Eviscerator. So, I have a proposal. I'm always about not wasting good things. There is a weapon in the 40k universe that would occupy the exact position, shape, size, and to an extent, damage that this weapon does. It's called the Heavy Chainsword. This picture is from my personally retained copy of the 5th edition rulebook for Warhammer 40k. I have personally never seen a heavy chainsword in any game I have ever played, or any model I have ever seen. I'm pretty sure they forgot about it, which is why you don't have rules for it anymore. This is basically a great weapon version of the chainsword, and it does a commensurate amount of damage. But it's not as slow, or big, or absurd as the Eviscerator is, and it has no power field. However, the Eviscerator is still just a little too weak for my taste, so I propose that this two-handed weapon be treated like a two-handed weapon and do more damage than the one-handed combat axe. I'm going to put up a little stats card, and you can see what I'm talking about. I also think this weapon really needs the Slaughterer blessing. I know it's lame to have one Best in Service blessing, but until Fat Shark rebalances their blessings, I propose that we add this to the roster. So the Heavy Chainsword does 300 damage and it has access to the Slaughterer Blessing as well as the Rampage Blessing, which maybe gets buffed, and then that puts them in a competition with one another a little bit. I think that's a good place for the Heavy Chainsword to be. Okay, so now, instead of being about the same as the one-handed chain axe, the Heavy Chainsword is better than the one-handed chain axe, at least in terms of raw damage output, and probably time to kill on a lot of targets. That's good. That makes sense. It's a two-handed weapon. It should outperform the one-handed weapon in terms of raw damage. We maybe could nerf its dodges or something a little bit, but I say we're fine. We have a new problem, though. We don't have an Eviscerator in the game anymore, and we kinda need one. After all, we're playing Zealot, and we need an Eviscerator if we're going to have a Zealot in a 40k game. So we need a couple of things here. We need a bigger chainsword. It needs to be longer and girthier. It needs to be about as tall as the character is, and then be held in their hands and swung around. And it should be a bit wider. Some people have different tastes on how girthy the chainsword should be. I'm favorable to the old-fashioned ultra plank, but we can let Fat Shark do the artwork since they're better at it than I am. We need one other thing, though. It can't just be a bigger chainsword. That's already in the game now, and it's called the Heavy Chainsword. We need a power field, a low-power power field. Here's what I would propose. Use the same power effect we're already using on the Power Sword and the Iron Helm, but make it red. That's low power in my brain, and I think it works just fine in my little mock-up here. And it should do a lot of damage. An absolute truckload of damage. And it should swing so slowly that it's a damned risk to take. You wind that thing up for half an hour and you swing it for a century. But it goes through everything for a truckload. That's how it should play. It should feel slow as tar, absurd, like you're overcommitting on every option. It should be hard to use, and the reward should be fun, cutting everything in half, making power swords look lame by comparison, dropping crushers in a few hits, that kind of stuff. Alright, there's one other thing I didn't mention that I do hate about the Eviscerator, but I want to save that subject for more of a broader approach to the chain weapons after the next patch. We'll see if Fat Shark does anything with them, because I've already given them some of this feedback. The Eviscerator, as it stands now, the Heavy Chainsword, as it shall forever be called on this channel anyway from now on, since there is no Eviscerator in Darktide, has paddle-like lights. When you go hit something with them, it's like swinging a 2x4. It feels terrible. I could go into it in great detail, but we'll do that another day. So suffice it to say, with my proposed changes, we have fixed the game. Darktide is officially saved. We have the Heavy Chainsword as appropriate, and the Eviscerator as appropriate, and therefore we can all retire happy, fulfilling our dreams. Thanks for visiting me. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
The bomber has fallen! Not long now,